Video 2 or part 2 of chapter 4, language. So the other thing about the language has rules is that punctuation also plays a part, which I briefly discussed a few minutes ago. So those exclamation points, those question marks, where do we put those? Where do we put those commas? In public speaking, we talk about anytime that there's a comma, it's a pause. Anytime that there's a question mark, your voice changes. Anytime there's an exclamation point, your voice changes, right? So it's the same thing with communication. So you can go ahead and see that language shapes perceptions. It changes the way that we perceive situations. Maybe the significant other that you're having this argument with says something and they say in a really direct form, and that's not what they mean, but that's how you took it. Right? That's where language comes into play. And I do get excited about language because I think about it in that perception form. So it shapes the way that we view things. That nasty email that your boss sent out or your coworker sent out. So all of that plays into a huge part of, our perception. We labelize people that way. So we respond to one person as if they were one label, and that's totalizing. So everyone, and that goes into that stereotyping if we think about perception. And then it shapes and reflects relationships, and of course it does. You look for certain people because you know that they're good at something. Maybe they're good at writing, maybe they're good at speaking, so you go to them as well. And then language evaluates. And under that, we talk about that it reflects and shapes perceptions, and it can be loaded, which I really like a lot too, because we talk about that some words strongly shape our meanings and perceptions. And they kind of give up the terms like geezer and old fogey, and, tells us that they're older people. And then senior citizen, older person reflect more of respectful attitudes. So if we say someone's a geezer, that may mean that we don't agree with them, that they don't see it, or maybe they're going crazy. But if we say elderly, that means they have more respect. And that goes back to those first 3 things about symbols, about language, right? It's abstract. It has lots of different meanings. Language can degrade others. We've all seen this, and we've all maybe, seen this and heard this and actually, seen it in movies, and maybe some of us have felt it, that language can degrade us and make us feel less than who we are and who we can be. And that goes back into that self in chapter 2. Right? So in chapter 2, we really kind of looked at what shapes us, and language can shape us. It can definitely shape who we are, make us better, or it can tear us down. Think about that TED Talk about language and how that works. Language organizes perception. So think about the perception process, that third stop. And it says that it allows abstract thought, and language can stereotype. So think about that. How can it can stereotype because there are certain words that have meanings. And we attach those words to those people, and then we keep them. So think back to that geezer and using that, it's like that totalizing. So using that labeling for everyone. And then language allows hypothetical thought. So it can go beyond immediate and can concrete concerns and then dimensions of time. And then we can also foster personal growth. It also relies on self-reflection. It can tell us how to monitor our communication and how to manage our image. So we can look back and say, and this is where empathy and that whole perception comes into play, right? Because then we can go back and say, if I was in that situation and someone had said to me what I said to them, would I be okay with that? And if not, then how are you going to fix that? So you can think about that. And then it also helps for us to monitor who we are and how we speak to other people, because we don't want to degrade them and we don't want to cause stereotypes. So think about that as well. So there's also a speech community, and that exists where people uses the same norms, and you can really relate this to that culture. Remember when they said that speech, language, and culture reflect one another? That's what that speech community is. So it tells you that these people are the same. And then gender speech communities, which gets into a whole nother area, talking about like sexist language versus racist language, and how do those two mix, and how can we get rid of those? Think of like businesswomen, black Friday, or not businesswoman, businessman, Black Friday, all of those words that can be filled with racist or sexist meanings. So we look back at those and we get that really uncomfortable feeling. It's because it's one word that we've attached negative feelings with. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and there's going to be another video because we didn't get through all of this chapter.